there, Chipmunks! Welcome to the AMP Cycling Ride Review Series. I'm your host, Angry Chipmunk, and today we're in New Zealand doing the Waiau to Waikari ride. This route is available on Rouvy, so let's get right into it. Now, this is a pretty long route at 50 kilometers, but it's quite flat at only 276 meters of elevation gain. The whole route averages just 1%, but will peak at 10%. Around half of the elevation gain in this ride is in the last 10 kilometers. There are no Strava segments in the Rouvy route, and none are listed on Strava itself either, but there are two hills of significance in this ride. The first hill isn't until the 40 kilometer mark. It's about 3 kilometers long and peaks at 6%. It's not a very significant upturn, but it is noticeable from the flat before it. The steepest bit of this hill is in the last 500 meters, where the gradient does ramp up from about 2% to about 4 to 6%. There's no real need to pace this one at all. There's a short descent and flat before coming into the last hill at the 49 kilometer mark. It's only about 500 meters long, but does peak at 10%. This is just about the last thing you encounter for the ride, as it's quick and flat to the end from here. Now, because this route is quite flat, you can push it pretty hard or take it easy. Either way, you can get away with less of a warm-up than usual for this ride of this distance, just due to it being so flat. But because that last few kilometers are where most of the elevation gain is, you'll want to have a pretty good cool down. And as always, I recommend pre-fueling your ride with plenty of protein. And as this is a bit of a longer route, this is especially important. If you've pre-fueled, you can probably make it to about the halfway point before you need to fuel again. And if you're taking it easy, aim for somewhere between 15 to 20 grams of carbs. If you're going pretty hard, you might want to split your intakes into thirds with about 10 to 15 grams each time. That of course does depend on how hard you're pushing. And as always, have your fast-acting carbs on hand, things such as gummies, chocolate bars, full sugar drinks, etc. And as this doesn't have much in the way of elevation gain, they may not actually be as critical as another ride that does. Eating is possible at almost any point on this ride though, so there's no real need to make sure that you get something in at any particular point along the way. At 50 kilometers, a post-ride protein would be helpful, as well as a magnesium supplement, especially if you've made a pretty big push. The view on this one is just okay. Not the worst, but not the best New Zealand has to offer either. There are mountains in the background, but they don't really feature that prominently. There are of course a good range of sheep and cows to look out for. The sky is a bright blue, which does contrast nicely with the fields and hills around it. The route is along what appears to be a backcountry 2-lane highway, but it is actually pretty busy for the entire route. I went at a moderate pace for this one, and it took me about an hour and a half to complete on 100% difficulty emulation. Because you don't really need a massive warm-up for this one, I would say to budget between 1 to 2 hours for this ride. If you're quick, it could even be a sub 1 hour ride. I wouldn't say it's the best choice for those with time restraints though. Overall, this is a fun little route that is very accessible to all levels of rider. Even the ending hill isn't so long as to put it out of reach. It's a great midweek spin to break up climbs or to use to reach your distance goals. If you're a newer rider, the distance can seem a bit daunting, but the route itself is just so easy it can be a good platform to make that jump to longer rides. For this route, I would give a 4 out of 5. It's not bad, but not very exciting. It's just a good distance more than anything. For the climbs, half a point out of 5. Neither hill is very challenging at all, and I think they're suitable for pretty much any level of rider. The 10% is a bit steep, but it's also really very short. For the view, 3.5 out of 5. Not terrible, but not fantastic. It does get a bit samey after a while, and the amount of traffic on the road is a bit of a letdown. And overall, 3.5 out of 5. It's a good ride, if a little dull. It has its time and place, that's for sure. Well, that's it for this review, so thanks for watching, Chipmunks, and please let me know what you think of Waiau to Waikari if you complete it. I'll leave you to finish the rest of the ride, and I'll see you next week for another review. Until then, ride on, Chipmunks, ride on.